In this lesson, we're going to learn about Venn diagrams. And specifically Venn diagrams when it comes to categorical propositions. But first, Venn diagrams in general. We have two overlapping circles. Each circle represents a class or a category of things, just like we've seen from categorical propositions. So let's make the left-hand circle represent football players. So it includes all the football players in the whole world. The right-hand circle is going to include baseball players. And you'll notice that these two circles overlap. So on the left-hand side of the circle are people who are just football players. On the part where they overlap, we have people who are both football players and baseball players. And then the far right-hand side of the diagram, where the right-hand circle where they don't overlap, is people who just play baseball. And so there are people who are going to be just football players, like Tom Brady, and he's going to be in the far left-hand side of the diagram. There's going to be people like Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders, who are both football players and baseball players, and they're going to be in the place where the two circles overlap. And then there's people on the far right of the circle, like Derek Jeter, who is just a baseball player. Now, when it comes to categorical propositions, there is a way that we are going to use these Venn diagrams to represent what's found in a categorical proposition. So here's our A proposition, all S or P. S and P are variables that are going to stand in for any subject term and predicate term, no matter how complicated. So it could be all puppies or cutie pies or whatever. To represent this diagram or this categorical proposition with a Venn diagram, we're going to shade in the left-hand part of the diagram. So this is the way all A propositions are going to look. No matter what A proposition it is, it's going to be shading in the left-hand side of the diagram. So what we're doing right now is from the Boolean perspective. Boole was a mathematician and a philosopher, and he came up with this system. There's also the Aristotelian perspective that we're going to learn later. But for now, this is the Boolean perspective. You'll see questions about that on MindTap. All right, now, the E proposition, no SRP. Remember, S and P are like variables that can stand in for any subject term and predicate term. In order to represent this one with a Venn diagram, we're going to shade in the area where they overlap. Finally, or next, the I proposition, some SRP. Draw our two overlapping circles. And there's an X in the middle where they overlap. The O proposition, some S are not P. We're going to draw our overlapping circles and put the X on the left-hand side of the diagram. So these are our four standard form categorical propositions. Every time you diagram one of the four, it's going to look like one of these. Now what these marks mean, we've either got shading or we've got X's. As you can see there, I've said there's nothing exists here. So in the A proposition, I'm drawing the arrow to the shaded part. And what that shaded part means is there is nothing there. Nothing exists in that area where it's shaded. In the E proposition, I shaded in the middle, and you'll see the arrow pointing to the middle part where the shading means nothing exists here. The X represents at least one thing that exists in the area where they overlap. So that's what the shading always means nothing exists here, and X always means at least one thing exists here. So normally when we say things like some puppies are cute or some puppies are not brown, we think that, it means more than one. But for Venn diagrams, categorical propositions, it doesn't mean more than one necessarily. It just means at least one. So these I and the O propositions are going to be true as long as one thing exists in that area. Now notice, because the shading represents nothing exists here, from the Boolean perspective, what this means is that the A and the E propositions do not imply the existence of anything. Because they literally mean, that's all they mean, is that nothing exists in that shaded part. From the Boolean perspective, the I and the O propositions both imply the existence of something. Remember what the sentence says. At least one thing exists here. So notice the difference. A and the E propositions, nothing exists here, so they don't imply the existence of anything. The I and the O propositions, at least one thing exists here. So they both imply the existence of something. Now, what's going to be important as we continue to talk about the difference between the Boolean perspective and the Aristotelian perspective is that Boole and Aristotle disagree on how to interpret A and E propositions. So in the next video, I'm going to explain the difference between Boolean and Aristotelian perspectives when it comes to what's called existential import. So if something implies the existence of something else, then that thing has existential import. If it doesn't imply the existence of that thing or anything, then it does not have existential import. So from the Boolean perspective, the A and the E propositions do not have existential import. The I and the O propositions do have existential import. Aristotle and Boole are going to agree about I and O propositions, but they are going to disagree about A and E propositions.